We're going to call the Hermiston City Council work session. If you're joining us online, the City Council gets together several times a year to do a deeper dive into subjects that we need more information about. And tonight we have a special work session to talk about our digital infrastructure as well as an emergency plan. So Mr. Smith, how would you like to lead this off?
Well, I'd like to ask Mr. Rivera to walk us through the digital infrastructure piece, and then after he's finished, we'll have the emergency plan discussion.
All right. We've got two big guns, and we're going to split them up over the course of an hour, huh?
I'm going to take probably 15 minutes and then bring the big gun for the remainder of the conversation.
Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council, appreciate you having me tonight. At our council work session earlier at the beginning of the year, one of the things that we brought to council was an overall high-level discussion about digital infrastructure and how it impacts the city of Hermiston, not only the city departments and staff, but also to the community as a whole. And so tonight, we're here to give you an update on that process. Both City Manager Smith and myself have been working on this. The presentation is really designed to be a conversation, so feel free to flag me or let me know if there's any areas that you want to explore and talk about. There is time in the presentation to do that for that specific reason. I know there's a lot of interest in this topic, not only at council level, but also in our community. So tonight specifically, we're going to talk about how digital infrastructure within the city of Hermiston relates to council goal number 6. We have a partner in this effort. We reached out and got some professional assistance because these type of topics can spider web pretty quickly, and we want to be real intentional and focused on the areas and efforts that we put towards this. The first part of that process is a digital needs and readiness assessment. This is primarily what we're going to report on tonight. It was in your council packet if you had an opportunity to review that. If not, we're going to work through the high-level stuff and base the conversation on that. And then at the conclusion of my presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about next steps. And then as part of the council agenda this evening, we're going to ask you to potentially give some additional direction and guidance to us and potentially approve this plan. So first, starting out, talking about, as a reminder, Council Goal 6 is plan for city facilities that meet current and future needs. So over the past year, City Manager Smith and myself have been researching fiber broadband infrastructure options to connect city-owned, specifically to connect city-owned facilities. This was a map I showed you previously. On that map is all the city-owned facilities, everything from the buildings we occupy to lift stations, pump stations, parks, airport, and facilities. Now, right now, only the city buildings are connected, and those connections are through multiple providers over various types of infrastructure. Some of them aged with limited capacity within them. That has really highlighted a few issues we've had. Even before the pandemic, we talked about how availability, speed, and reliability were issues and barriers to staff and departments collaborating, as well as implementing new technologies within the city. So earlier, even back 15, 16, we knew that this was something that we wanted to put some energy towards. These problems, through the pandemic, we really started to understand it's a broader community impact. And these issues of providing these level of services are important to the residents of the city of Hermiston. So with these issues created, we understand that we have an opportunity right now. This is an opportunity to develop a more comprehensive, equitable solution for broadband access within the city and possibly within the community. And how we go about that is what we're going to discuss. So the staff has been working, like I said, we reached out for some expertise in that area. We don't currently have any expertise in broadband specifically within the Hermiston staff. So we have been working with a consultant, SNG, Strategic Networks Group, to assist us primarily in the strategic planning of this as we investigate the connection of the city of Hermiston facilities. This work on this, what we're calling a digital infrastructure roadmap for the city, is really intended to help not only city staff but also council develop long-term infrastructure plans that can really maximize the benefit of it. And tonight we're going to talk about that first phase of that process, outlining the digital needs and readiness assessment. So a little bit about SNG. So SNG was founded in the late 90s. Really their mission and how it ties to us, what we really found of value from them is they really come in, and they're one of the few organizations, if any, that really look at the economic benefit and the benefit to a community, and they weigh those benefits against the cost and the effort of putting in digital infrastructure and communities undertaking these broadband investments. We know we can go out and access firms that can actually tell us how to do the poles and the wires and the connections and everything related to the engineering of a project like this. We know we can get there, but when we talked about it at our retreat in January, there was some consensus around council that if we're going to undertake this type of opportunity, we really want to not miss the real opportunities within our community. And if we're going to do this, what ancillary benefits can we provide? Maybe it is just connecting the city of Hermiston facilities. But while we're doing that, what can we tag on to this? And both with state and federal funding becoming priorities, we want to make sure that we're prepared to maximize our efforts on this project. So SNG has worked, they did the state of Oregon's broadband assessment, and they also did the state of Oregon's best practices guide. They've also worked with Ammon, Idaho on their municipal fiber, so they have experience at the state, local level, county level, really understanding and really putting a quantitative and qualitative report to help us move the conversation forward. So that first phase is this digital needs and readiness assessment. And what this is when you think about this, is they come in and assist community leaders, council, in understanding how ready a community is to undertake this type of initiative. They help us identify what the goals in the community are and what the needs in the community are. So through this process, they kind of give us the framework, kind of a jumping off point. So earlier in June, 23 community leaders participated in this needs and readiness assessment. All 9 counselors, the 3 county commissioners, 4 members of administration, and then 9 key stakeholder organizations: school district, hospital, electric cooperative, chamber of commerce, people like that. So the overall assessment, we're going to start from the top down. Overall assessment for the city of Hermiston, they give us a score to kind of give you a visual of where you're at. Currently today, the city of Hermiston, based on this, ranked at a 63%. So what does the 63% mean? Well, the overall assessment for readiness, kind of if your community, the bottom number is your community ready to go to undertake this effort, is a 71%. 71% and higher means your community right now is ready to proceed to the next step. You guys have everything in place where you can be successful undertaking this effort. We rank just underneath that. We're in the area of, we're on the path to be ready, but there's some areas that we need to identify and work towards to be successful if we undertake that. And that's a really valuable feedback for us as staff to look and see where those gaps are. So when we start communicating this to the community and the anchor tenants and things like that, we can be clear and concise about what we're trying to do. So based on this needs assessment, there's areas that shows we're on the right path. The following findings is the community really is in alignment on the priority goals for the community. When we asked this group of people, there's certain goals that really stood out, and we had some consensus in that. The understanding of the rationale needed to drive a broadband initiative. So overall, a strong consensus on the goals really centered around economic growth, more robust access, and expanding education and training opportunities. And all those have been kind of part of the thread that's been within the city council's conversations for the last several years, and specifically in the last year, related to the need of broadband access in our community and the education side and health. So economic growth also reflected in the top needs and issues regarding workforce skills, attracting and retaining businesses, and improving job opportunities. So there were wide kind of range of opinions on what issues and needs were important. The community as a whole kind of came together on what goals were important, but the issues and needs is where we saw more of the discrepancies. So the current state of broadband is inadequate to meet our current community needs. This conversation we're going to touch a little bit more, and it's a little deeper dive in the full report. But anywhere between 25 and 50% is identified as underserved in the community of Hermiston. So the vision and value of digital infrastructure needs to be developed. We know that. We need to create more buy-in from local leaders and community at large. We're not ready right now. The community's not aware of what actually we would be trying to do if we rolled out and said we're going to undertake a digital initiative or increase broadband. You know, we got feedback saying, well, what does that really mean? Once we create that buy-in, you know, this kind of gives us that jumping off point. This kind of creates a mandate that says the community is bought into this idea, and from that mandate, we can take it forward, or we can partner with various groups in the community to move an effort like this forward. A real positive note is, you know, leadership is ready to act. Based on this assessment, that was one strong thing that came back is the leaders are prepared to take action. You know, when we looked at these conversations and we looked at the responses, that was a real key point, is leaders are ready. So what are the areas that can be improved? So how do we get that 63 up past that 70% if we're interested in taking these goals on? Well, there's a recognition of strong leadership in the community, but there's a lack of a clearly stated formal vision addressing what we want to do. And creating that formal vision of what we're going to do is really going to lead this conversation and create that buy-in. We don't have that. The community hasn't identified that, of what clearly they want. This process is going to help us work towards that. We need a better understanding of where the current gaps in broadband service are. Leaders need to understand the value of this digital infrastructure. You know, we have these conversations that I think all of you sitting at this table understands there's gaps in the community. Some portion of service, some sections of the city, you know, have 5 different providers with up to gigabit speed. Some sections of the city can only be fed through wireless with capped capacity. And when you look at bringing a community as a whole forward, we have to understand where those gaps are. You know, it's those underserved areas that needs to become a priority to start eliminating some of those gaps. Those gaps, you know, in education, health, and smart community services. Those are the areas, if we're going to move Hermiston through a digital infrastructure or broadband effort from the city, these are the areas that are going to provide the most community benefit. And then also helping the community better understand the needs of these, both in the residents and the business as a whole. So the ability to fund, finance, and maintain an effort. I think that was one of the things that was called out several times in the comments of the feedback from these groups. You know, the ability to fund it. How are we going to pay for an initiative like that? Do we finance it? Are there state grants? Are there federal grants? Can we partner with anchor institutions? Can we pool resources? But once you fund and finance, how do you maintain it? How do you take one-time money and create something that you own for essentially the rest of Hermiston? You know, how do we maintain and operate a system like that? And when we look at the opportunity to fund and finance that, those long-term conversations need to be part of that. Other readiness issues can be addressed over time. You know, this is, like I said, the first phase of this process. When we take this first phase, the other stuff we've seen can be if we have authority to move forward and do deeper dives into some of these areas. we feel like some of those answers will also continue to kind of come to the surface. So when we look at the goals for the city of Hermiston, so if you look at that chart, these are the top 5 goals, and understanding the score. So the score is indicative of people see it's a goal for the city of Hermiston. Convergence is where they rank it in priority. So you look at the score in number 1, new opportunities for work and economic growth. The majority of the respondents said, hey, that's really our number 1 goal for our community. And 71% said that's our top goal. So when you look at these, you know, anything right around 70% and higher, that's where we're ready to proceed. Anything below that 70%, that's where we need to do more work educating and helping inform the community of why there's value, or if there's value, and where we allocate those resources to meet those needs. So work economic growth, that robust and competitive broadband, online education and training, integrating health services, and then improve and monitoring clean water and sanitation services. So when you see those top 5 goals, you know, 78% was our lowest number in our top 5. That shows that these are all primary goals for the community. This is where we focus our effort in creating value and creating the message. And if we're going to lead an effort like this, this is where the community says, this is where you need to focus on. Why smart community services did not make a top 5 goal, it was a big priority for City Council. Looking at the responses, so the people at the dais up here, 77% said it was a high priority, 22% said it was a medium priority. And when I say smart community services, that's really city infrastructure type stuff. That's integrating water meters, that's integrating electric meters, that's integrating traffic cameras, that's integrating resources like real-time police monitoring, creating those underneath layers of community value that people don't see every day, but really create community value. And it's then that transition from being able, like on the electric side, to pull up an app and you can see daily reads of what you used, or pull up a water app and see daily reads and see if leak detection, that kind of stuff. That's smart community services. The city's already undertaken some of that, and I think that helps explain why council, you know, you guys are also part of your job description is essentially to represent the city on issues like that. So it made sense to us why your priorities were higher in that area, but to understand where the community's at and where they value that is important. It's important to understand where the community's at when they look at these type of things. So although we could go out and say, this is why we're doing it, if we don't create that understanding for the community, we're going to miss the mark a little bit, and that's going to limit how invested and how much people understand what we're doing. And given that the main focus of council goal number 6 and what we're looking at is connecting City of Hermiston resources, pump stations, lift stations, parks, buildings, we really need to give consideration to that, how we go out and share that message and create those partners. So when we look at high priority, and that's just the people who took the survey and what they classified as high priority, there were 3 areas between City Council and the community leaders that had some difference. So smart community service, we just touched on that. More communication and consultation on really what it is and why it's beneficial and needed for the stakeholders. This was one that stood out to us as well. New ways of working together on community goals. Council viewed that as a top priority, 56% of your respondents. The community put it at 14%. There's a big discrepancy there. We looked into some of the response. You saw the top 5 that showed that we're in consensus of what we think a goal is, but how much of a priority these goals are, there's some differences there. And so these type of things are what's kind of holding us back right now from getting on the edge of the diving board and jumping in on an effort like this. These are the areas that give feedback to Byron and I where we can help either one, get prepared, or two, understand that this is an effort that's not going to bear fruit. It doesn't make sense for us to try to put something in front of the community that the community is not going to support. And right now, the working together on this community goal, we don't have consensus. I'm sorry? 10 minutes? Okay, thank you. Chief, would it be okay if I took a little of your time? Yeah, anyone, every time I'm up here, I struggle to stay in the timeline. Access to robust and competitive broadband. Council viewed that as a very high priority. Local community leaders kind of put it in the middle. When we look at issues and needs, looking at the green in the scores, that's where we had consensus. The red, the convergence, is where they put those issues and needs. And that's where we saw it. And we kind of had an idea of that because we don't have a clearly stated vision and goal yet. We don't have a clear path to success on this. And so that convergence number, people identifying what's most important and what's the biggest issues, people are going to be a little bit in the middle of that. But workforce skills, attracting, retaining business, employees, good paying jobs, stimulating that local business growth, improving emergency services, that health, police, fire. So like I said, the low convergence indicates a wide range of opinions on, where we need to put our energy. The more energy we put in this, the more consensus we can get on it. This will help us set that clear vision and goals while engaging the stakeholders in the conversation. We know what the issues are. It's how we create priorities and where we focus our efforts with the resources. So then we get to the quality and availability question. So like I talked about earlier, service in Hermiston varies significantly across Hermiston. So multiple providers in certain areas, high quality options, areas with little, if any, service. So the perception of council and the perception of our community, this chart's a little harder to see, but between 20 and 50% is the feeling that we're underserved, that we need to do more. This is reflected in the participants and that conversation around speed, value, and availability. The most significant variation is understanding the level of what residents and businesses are underserved. This is the feeling of the community. What's the actual data? And to do that, we need to go further to understand that. And that's going to lead that conversation. The perception is we have a gap. How big is that gap, and what do we need to do to fill it is where we're going to be working towards. So the majority of respondents felt at least 25% of the residents are underserved and possibly more than 50%. A quarter of the respondents, including 4 of you, indicated they didn't know. That can provide an opinion at the level that we understand what we talked about. If we don't know, the community doesn't know. So how can we lead a project if we don't know? And getting the answers to these questions are what we need to understand before we try to undertake it. It doesn't make sense to overbuild a well-served area, and it doesn't make sense to allocate those infrastructures and the effort and do the design if we're not going to maximize that benefit. So what's next? Where do we go from here? Like I said, there's quite a bit of information in the report. Does deeper dives on all the stuff I covered. I am talking about primarily the executive summary, but you can read the comments that all the participants shared, get deeper dives into some of the goals, and it lists the additional goals and the priorities and needs. But tonight at council, we're going to recommend accepting the digital needs and readiness assessment. It's still currently in a draft form. Based on the conversation that we have after this, if you guys have additional feedback or we can get clarification that you guys feel like would be helpful to have in that first report, we certainly can do that. And then we felt, based on our score and where we're at, we're ready to proceed with the economic case assessment. And this is a key part of the puzzle. This is really where we find out if the community benefit will outweigh the cost of investing in this digital infrastructure. When Byron and I kind of wireframed the path on this, we wanted to ensure that council had plenty of opportunities to do go, no go processes. We want to keep you guys informed, up to speed on everything we are working on. And so tonight is that first step of go, no go. If what you've seen tonight says, maybe this isn't where you want staff effort to go, this is that opportunity. We feel like there's enough potential and enough consensus in the community to move to the next step and look more at those community benefits versus the costs. That process is at about an 8-week process. So that's kind of where we're at today. That would be the next step if we got guidance from you guys tonight. And with that, I'm happy, or Byron and I are both happy to answer any questions that you have from the report.
Byron, did you want to add anything before?
No, I think he covered the points that we wanted to kind of highlight for the council, and then just open to hear feedback and discussion.
So this is a huge conversation, and we could easily take the next 35 minutes to talk about it. I know in our work session we're limited by that 1 hour. We could extend that into the regular agenda meeting and ask more questions at that time. So do you want questions about just the report right now, or broadband in general, or do we want to just touch them all right now, or ask those questions when we get to the agenda item? How would you like to handle that so we save time for the chief?
Well, I think if we finish this up, a discussion right now, wherever it ends, if we finish it up about 20 minutes to the hour, we'll have enough to walk through the emergency plan discussion, and then any additional questions we could handle in the regular agenda.
I think the emergency plan is a pretty big topic too, so I don't want to shortchange the chief any. I know how much he loves to talk in public, but at the same point, I think the council may have some questions about emergency preparedness as well. So 20 minutes, so we've got 13 minutes till that time frame. Does that work with the council? And you can ask more questions later too. Maria, you got your hand up first. Why don't you go first?
Yes, thank you. I was looking at the respondents, 23 of them, which I appreciate you providing that information, but city council members, who knows? I'm not going to say why or how they answered, but most of us have a job where we have access to email. If we look at our phones, we have access to everything, So maybe in their minds, gosh, there's no issue there, because we have access to that. I think if we were to ask the rest of the community, you would get a different take on that, because it was very obvious during the shutdown and distance learning that there were major gaps in the city and even outside of the city limits when it came to the broadband access. So I appreciate you putting a plan together, because I think it is very important that we do make it accessible to as many community members as possible in a way where it's not so expensive, because a lot of the companies want you to have a package rather than just the wireless access, which is what a lot of parents need. And thinking down the road, well, if and when we do have the Delta variation, and if we go into another shutdown mode, we will see that issue again in the educational setting. So I think this is very important for us to be talking about it, because I think if we were to present it to parents as, okay, remember when the distance learning happened? Did you see, the need for more access to the internet? And I think you will see a difference, because some of the members perhaps too, their children are no longer at home. Mm-hmm. So, they don't get to see that as an issue. And a lot of folks don't get on their social media, so they don't know. But like I said, I do find this topic very interesting, because I think as a community, we need to be mindful and responsive to the needs of the rest of the community members. So thank you for putting it together, and I would love to hear what other comments, my colleagues have.
So I'm going to follow up on...
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, just to kind of follow up on that, I think that's, this process we laid out is really kind of a step-by-step, and so we're hitting the community leaders, getting that perspective, and then as we, if we want to move forward, then that puts us talking more directly to more of the consumer level people who then we can figure out more on a better basis where the needs are, and then the city can be more strategic in what investment, if we make one, where would it be and how would we do it?
I see this as really two separate conversations. And one would be, what is the city doing with its intra-connectivity systems? Okay, like in my office, all of our computers are hooked up to one network. They all talk to each other and they all interconnect. Is that something the city is trying to do as an organization? And is that independent conversation of what we're trying to provide for our community members? And so I think I see those as two separate identifiable situations. And I think what, to Maria's point, would probably be the community part. And that's a much broader conversation, much larger conversation. And maybe you could identify what this step was as far as what we're trying to identify by these guys and what SNG did.
Yeah, excellent question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it is two different paths. At the retreat, we talked about the needs for the city of Hermiston to connect our facilities. That's the direction you gave us to work on. You didn't give us direction to go out and solve the community problem as a whole. You said work on how do you connect the city of Hermiston facilities and how do we do a better job providing service to the residents and businesses of the city. So we took that and we started with that. So we know we're going to be working on that to bring a plan back to you. And when we looked at that, we said, okay, if we're going to do this work, which is significant, is there ancillary benefits that we can maximize the investment and maximize the benefit to the community? Not saying we're going to undertake those, but if we're going to have this conversation and do the work, let's maximize that work at the time we spend towards it. So we're not looking at that side per se. We're looking at connecting the city facilities, and as we look at that, how can we maximize the investment? So S&G is assisting us that we don't miss the mark on that. If we're going to undertake as a city to connect all our facilities, if we look at the map, might be able to go back to the beginning of it. But if you look at the map of where we are and all our facilities within the city of Hermiston, it really surrounds the city. And so if we're essentially going to create infrastructure all throughout the city, does it make sense for us to look at those efforts? And so they are two. S&G's helping us understand that, understanding, the value that it takes to put in. Does it create more community value? So that's the map that we're going off of. Once you start stringing wires to all those locations, you're really surrounding the city. And with that, that's the jumping off point to have that bigger second discussion.
So if we were to put the infrastructure in place, the skeleton, the backbone, whatever you want to call that, could you partner with corporate partners to also use that same skeleton, backbone, spine, whatever, to run service? Because if it goes right by my house and I want to jump off, and does that make sense? Is that what we're talking about? Is that an option?
I think right now we are at that top of that funnel, and everything's still an option. As we continue to go down this path, it's going to close and tighten and tighten and tighten to ensure that we're maximizing the effort and investment. Some stuff, even though it creates a benefit, is not going to outweigh the cost and effort to do it. And it may be future years or future efforts. Your second question on, is this a city-led effort or is the city going to be putting in? We don't know that either. We currently don't have any staff that does fiber. And so does it mean partnering with a local entity? Does it mean, bringing multiple organizations together to partner? That's what these kind of discussions kind of start bearing fruit, is the idea of who's interested, who wants to participate, and if they want to participate, what are their needs in it? Why do they want to participate? Well, economic growth, strengthening our businesses, creating these things, they're willing to jump on board and partner with us if we're going to focus on that. And so it's creating a coalition to meet community needs. And The more consensus we have, the more effort we can put towards it. And right now, background we've done, and now this is that first step of actually going out and talking and having these conversations. And so we hope that next effort continues this conversation and continues to bring more clarity. We're not going to have a lot of clarity tonight, honestly. We've started the discussion. You see where we're at based on, are we ready for this? That's as much clarity as we have. And that's why we need to do more work.
Counselor?
So, is this thing working? Okay. So I think something that, because I love what I'm seeing so far, and it's kind of what I was hoping I'd say. If we could find, sister type cities that have gone through a similar process, because I'm a big fan of not reinventing the wheel, that have gone through similar processes, and, that way we could kind of picture, like, okay, what would this look like perhaps if we did something like it? I think perhaps it would give us an opportunity to have a stronger visualization of what this could look like for us. And I mean, it's one thing to talk about having everything, like a smarter system and that kind of thing. It's like, all right, but what does that look like in nickel and dimes? And what is that going to mean for the consumer and in case of emergency and all of these things that we think we know, but it's nice to actually see a nice pie chart that says it all pretty. Oh, so if we had that, I think that'd be amazing. But that looks awesome.
Mr. Mayor, part of the background that Nate was talking about that we did is we looked at what other cities around the country, and there's basically a different solution in every city, right? Everybody kind of figures out what works for them, and one of the things we liked about this consulting group is that they could help us walk through and figure out what fits for us. But when we get down to the point of asking you to commit, millions of dollars to something, we will have something like that where we can show the benefits in relationship to the costs. And that's kind of what Nate was talking about, is we need to be able to, justify whatever we spend is going to be a benefit to the community. And so maybe connecting, the northeast half of the city is a huge benefit in different ways that we can partner with somebody. But, in another area, maybe the city needs to bear more of a burden because there are other reasons. And so it really could look very different depending. And so as we take more steps, we'll have more of that type of information.
It is good feedback, though. Thank you.
Counselor Primer?
Yeah, I being one of the people that remembers this, maybe we should be looking back into our past, because Hermiston used to be a leader in that. We used to have one of the few cities in the nation that had the cloud coverage. Granted, it was funded by CSEP, but I mean, we used to have this capability, and throughout the years, it's with the funding from CSEP stopping and such, we lost that ability. But, again, look to the past to maybe solve some of the problems of the future.
Yeah. And that's an excellent example of where the community comes together to meet a community need. And so that's a great recommendation to go back and identify some of those partners who led that effort and glean some of their feedback and say, what did you do well and what areas would have you changed? So yeah, I agree with you. That's a great recommendation.
So what you're asking for from the council later is some sort of agreement to proceed or move forward with further research on this topic. And that's kind of the basically. We're going to accept this consultation review and then instruct you to spend more money to go out and research more. Is that kind of what we're talking about tonight?
Yeah, it's really important that council understands exactly what we're undertaking here. This is an area that can weave in and out of public-private partnerships, and we want to make sure that you guys are aware every step of the way where we're at and what we're doing. Because we want to have long-term partnerships in our community and to eliminate that confusion. So we created these STOP go points in the process to make sure that you guys are confident and comfortable with what we're doing.
Okay.
So
We're at our time frame. Can you save your question till?
I certainly can.
Thank you. I want to make sure the chief has plenty of time. So we'll have time later. You're going to stick around?
I
correct,
certainly
Nate?
will,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you for your report, and I'll invite the chief up to talk about emergency plan.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, actually, I'm going to walk through the plan. The chief will be here to be our expert, as well as appreciate Deputy Chief Davis from the Umatilla County Fire District Number 1, which is, this type of an emergency planning effort is really a partnership when we don't house the fire department. That they're a primary agency in responding to so many of these types of emergencies. So this really came up as Chief Hermiston was working towards this idea of accreditation for the police department, and having a current emergency plan was one of those things that process was looking for. And so if you look on this draft report starts on page 30 of your council packet, and what we wanted to do tonight is to have a discussion about this, get feedback from the council, and the plan would be to bring back a final draft for approval at our next council meeting, or one after that, depending on any research or efforts we needed to make in between meetings. But just wanted to highlight, emergency management is really a 4-phase process: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And a lot of this plan really deals with the third and part of the fourth step of that, and that we're really talking about a response. We do a lot of efforts in our other operations to work at mitigation and work at preparedness, and then this is to help guide us in our response to emergency situations. And like it says in the report, past the introduction, basically, if it says the city of Hermiston, it means it's in conjunction with the fire district as well, because we just didn't want to have to add all those words all the time every time we referred. But just wanted to let you know this is done as a partnership with the district. One of the items that I wanted to just highlight, these types of emergency response plans, there's some national standards. NIMS is one of the great acronyms, which stands for National Incident Management System, and then there's an ICS, which is an Incident Command System. All those things are, national standards, and those are, our police officers are trained in that. The fire department is also trained in those and are ready to utilize those principles that have been found to be successful in dealing with emergency situations. So wanted to know that those are a part of that. Then if we take a look at section 1, it kind of gives a brief summary of the possible emergencies. It's not a list of all of them that might be possible in Hermiston. And so most of the report deals with a general approach to all of those types of emergencies. Now, the last section deals with a hazardous materials incident response, which is actually one of the highest risks that we have here as far as an emergency situation, and so it gets into that in more specifics. One highlight in section 1-5, the only way to prepare for these types of things is really kind of training, and sometimes you just have to sit at a table and talk about, well, what would happen if this, and so, we do those types of trainings. I know the fire department does that, the police department does that. We participate with lots of other agencies on different types of tabletop trainings, and so that's a piece of that, is we're going to have an ongoing effort to make sure we're prepared in that way. If we take a look at section 2.2, different types of emergencies might require a different agency or a different city department to be in charge of the response just because of their expertise. And so you'll see there a list of different emergencies and different departments that might be in charge. And, you know, again, this is a guideline. If the situation warrants it, we deal with it in a way that makes sense on the ground. And then all of the city departments will really be playing some kind of a role to support that effort in an emergency response. You know, there's different levels of an emergency, and we would respond differently to each of those. It talks about that throughout section 2, a level 1, 2, and 3 type of an emergency. Talking about, you know, some of the services we need to be aware of when we go into an emergency. One of the most important ones is to communicate with the public. And so that's dealt with in there in briefing the public. And, you know, that area is a constantly shifting one as we have social media that trying to get accurate information in the hands of the public and so forth. So that's another piece of this, but also using some of the tried and true, you know, over-the-air broadcasting to try to reach as many people as possible when we need to communicate the things that are going on. Section 3 talks about people's responsibilities, different groups' responsibilities, the tasks that they need to address. If you see in 3-1 is the city council responsibilities. And one of the things that we found as we were going through this, and as we were actually also in response to some of the COVID restrictions, our current ordinances and charter don't have a provision for us to declare an emergency. That's something that we need to address, and we've been getting some examples of language to utilize in the code. But the way the plan reads, city manager may declare a state of emergency, but then that has to be confirmed by the council within 5 days is what the plan says. But so that the governing body of the city is aware and working on whatever response is necessary. And this, you know, we could go into a lot of detail, and there's a lot of things in here. That's an overview of that. I'd be happy to talk about specifics, and we have the, you know, police and fire here to assist in that discussion.
Thank you. As part of this plan adoption, were there any planned, like, preparedness events that you were thinking about, or practice events, or, you know, situations where, I know that we've done some out at EOTech in the past, kind of countywide, but how about citywide as far as?
You know, I know there are different times where they have them planned. I don't know, I'm not aware of any that are planned. Chief?
So, and perhaps Jimmy can help me out with this. I know that Oregon Health Authority through the hospital, I believe, have to do 2 exercises a year, one probably being a tabletop and one being an actual exercise. If you think back to the CSEP days when the nerve agent was being burned outside the city, there was a lot of tabletop exercises. Admittedly, this is very foreign to law enforcement because it's very methodical, slow, structured, and, you know, we think, you know, having to make quick decisions and, you know, situations in front of us, here we go. This slows us down. The fire department or the fire district and fire departments in general are excellent at the incident command, and often you'll see fire departments take lead and law enforcement have a subservient role in that entire process.
We don't have one on the calendar, but we do have them on a regular basis.
We do have one specific to, it's not written in this plan, but an active shooter. So next summer, we're going to be training at Rocky Heights. It's opened up to the police department. We've invited the Oregon State Police SWAT team. They're going to go through, do their thing for one day, and then they're going to train our officers the second day.
I think, you know, the city's role, I think, you know, God forbid we ever have an incident that we have to deal with like this. You know, I just think of the poor people in Surfside, you know, Florida, that just went through that incident down there, and I'm sure that's something they weren't really prepared for. But having some sort of, you know, process in place is super critical, because you just never know. Look at the towns of Talent and Phoenix this last year with the wildfires, and you know, how you prepare your community for something disastrous like that. But I think the mitigation part is super critical, making sure that our ordinances are followed, and you know, why we have a code enforcement officer and why we have a building inspector, and all of those sort of things, to help mitigate the potential for you know, a collapse of an apartment building. But I do think the preparedness part is something that our community probably needs to, you know, have a conversation about, or practice, or at least, you know, do a tabletop conversation, so that should a situation involve, sometimes minutes matter, you know, and being able to not have to, you know, run around with a chicken like a head cut off or its head cough, you know, having our ducks in a row, I think is important. So I think there should be some sort of preparedness as part of that, and hopefully, you know, it makes our response and recovery a lot more seamless.
So
Councilor Peterson?
Cascadia is a perfect example of
Yeah.
that, you know, if we
Yeah.
were hit with a mass influx of people.
Yep, yeah, exactly. You know, and this last year, a lot of the LLC conversation revolved around emergency preparedness and making sure your communities are prepared. And so I'm glad to see us having that conversation. We don't, or aren't, it doesn't seem like, at risk for a lot of the situations that other communities are, but you just never know. And so having this preparedness in place, I think, is important for our community. I saw Councilor Peterson's hand up first.
So part of my day job is I work with special populations, and I always tell them, you know, you don't buy car insurance when your car is already in the ditch. And so kind of with that in mind, when this was being drafted, were special populations taken into account? Like, because we do have the hospitals, we do have the senior living facilities, you know, we do have, you know, residential facilities, that kind of thing, and knowing where those would be located in the city, and I mean, because that's kind of a specialty, and I know that this was the first draft and that kind of thing, but knowing, you know, that there are accessibility aspects and that kind of thing, just being aware of that.
Yes, you know, this is, not to sound cliche, but more of a 10,000-foot backbone, as you said, and we've seen it in other meetings we've had, be it mental health or homeless. We know there's all these resources out in our community that are sometimes constantly changing. Companies come and go, or whatever the case may be. And so I didn't want to get too far in the weeds on listing specifics. You know, we know in a large-scale event, we're going to rely heavily on the school district, city facilities, you know, specific to sheltering or whatever the case may be. That would have to be the next step. Not to sling mud by any means, but I personally, you know, we have a county emergency manager, and I would like to see that person show some interest in the various communities within the county, identify those resources, put pen to paper to assist this document. This is more just kind of an overarching roles and responsibilities.
How is our conversation with the county about this integrating with a county emergency plan? Have we had
Did
that?
you have some conversations with? No.
No.
Yeah. In communicating with the commissioners last year, I think there was some extreme frustration in their ability to manage the flood situations over the course of the last couple of years, and their emergency management system that they currently had, and their preparedness. And so I'm hoping that they're also having that conversation at the county level, but we absolutely need to partner with them in the conversation of what we do, because it often involves not just our city residents, but those residents around the city that are also county residents. So being able to integrate with some sort of county plan is super critical too. Mr. Primer, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, one of the things I just was going to bring up, I've been through the ICS stuff quite a bit over the years, and there's a lot of stuff on the FEMA site that I would strongly suggest that if you haven't gone through and taken some of the free online courses, ICS 100, ICS 200, do that, because it'll kind of it gives you kind of a more broad overview what the different roles and responsibilities of the different entities and how the command structure is laid out. And you can, and as you go through that, you can kind of see how we as a body would fit into that command structure. So if you haven't been through it, take a few, take an hour or two and go through that go to the FEMA website, and it'll help you out considerably.
Others?
Mayor?
Mr. On?
Yes, thank you. I think I would really like to see a tabletop exercise where we're also involved. There are some of us that are new, and I would echo what you already stated, where it's the county, it's the state as well, and the tribes, because we never know. And I think we should always be prepared. And we can only do that by practicing. So for CSEP, we used to do that once a year. And there would be other little exercises that some of the entities would have on their own. But with the major players, with law, fire, county, state, and even folks from, that was because of CSEP from the state of Washington. But I think it would be awesome for us to be able to have an evening where we are, doing some kind of a drill, so that we become familiar with some, that may not have that background. I think that would be so important.
Counselor Spicer-Coon, I saw your hand up.
I guess on a more practical side, will the fire district also be accepting this, or their governing body accepting this as their emergency plan as well? Because they're a separate entity to us. This defers a lot of authority in these emergency situations over to the fire department. And if they're not accepting this or making this their emergency plan, are we guaranteeing that we're on the same page? I know everybody gets along well now together and is able to work and discuss these things, but in 10, 15, 20 years, there's a good chance we have entirely different people, and we want to make sure that this is accepted by everybody and continues to be accepted, so that there's no argument or conflicts between our different emergency resources.
Well, just to tag on that a little bit, like what Chief Edmondson said, a lot of this is just a quick overview, kind of that 10,000 foot level. The reason I would step to the mic is the fire district right now is trying to work on kind of putting together an IMT Type 3 team. As you guys kind of brought up, we did have some issues with the flooding and some command level stuff. So that's something that we're trying to put together with, Pendleton Fire, other city agencies, police departments, so that we have more of a unified command moving forward to really handle those incidents and break them out so they're manageable. So that's something that's in the works on the fire side. The county, I know, just went through, retired Chief Pat Hart, I think, put together an emergency plan for the county. I haven't seen that recently and what that entails or how it ties into what you guys have put together. One of the other things I wanted to bring up is the fire department does house the state hazmat team, so that is a very good thing on this end. And the county also has what's called Alert Sense. I don't know if that's brought up in your plan, but that is a very useful tool to get that information out. It worked really well on the Labor Day fires that we had, and able to get that. So I just wanted to add that, so that was in there.
To your question, Chief Stanton was involved in this from the get-go. I can solidify your question by asking him what they plan to do with this document before it comes back to you.
Well, I think there's some more conversation in our regular agenda this evening, right, about...
No, I didn't plan for that. I plan to get some feedback now, and then we can come back next meeting and have further conversation before we adopt.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with Philip Spicer Kuhn. You know, when crap hits the fan, we've got to make sure that we've got our ducks in a row and the people that are identified, because under tension, stuff tends to go out the window. So we need to make sure it's clear who's responsible for what, and we're all on the same page and we're all in agreement with adoption. So I think it should be the city, you know, the fire district and the county, you know, all in agreement of this is the plan that will be part of conversation.
I do have a question of Byron.
Yeah.
Did you say that we don't have any mechanism to call for a state of emergency?
But that's what we found. We did not have authority under our codes to do that. And so we're going to bring back also an ordinance change that would allow that
Okay.
to take place.
Because that would be something that would need to be fixed. Yeah.
Or concurrent with the adoption of the plan.
So we still got more work to do.
Right, and this was a first conversation, looking for feedback.
So we are at the 7 o'clock time frame. Chief, thank you for showing up tonight.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys and your partnership in working with the city on trying to figure out an emergency plan for the future. So let's take a quick 30-second, 1-minute recess so counselors can go to the restroom if they need to, and then we will start back up at 7:03. Meeting now. So if you're just now joining us, we had a work session prior to this as a city council to discuss the digital infrastructure strategic plan as well as an emergency plan. And both of them excellent discussions, not near enough time. We need to elaborate a lot more on that, but it's good groundwork and a good start to the conversation. So we do have a quorum this evening, all members present. Please join me in the flag salute. Well, thank you for joining us this evening in person. If you are watching online or you would like to watch online, it's available through our Hermiston YouTube channel. Just as a reminder to our counselors, please get close to the microphone so that they can hear you on the online version. We are going to move the Hermiston School District presentation to a little bit later. And so we're going to go on to item number 7. Do we have any other changes to the agenda, Ms. Smith? Nothing?
No.
Okay. We're at the first opportunity for citizen input on non-agenda items. We will get to the agenda items later, and you'll have an opportunity to speak to those. But if there are items you would like to address with the City Council that aren't on our current agenda, please come up to the microphone, introduce yourself by name and address, direct your comments to me, and try to limit them to less than 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Ryan Sievers. I live at 823 East Newport Avenue here in Hermiston. And I just wanted to make some, I don't know exactly what I want. I don't want to come here and just complain about one thing. But I would like there to be some sort of mechanism with our pool and the patrons who use it that's better than what we have now, which is just complaining, which no one really wants to do. So I just a solution. I'm looking for a solution.
I guess I don't understand your concern. Can you be more specific about what you're concerned about?
Well, we have a beautiful pool that we only get to use a fraction of it. I like to lap swim when I can, but some days I have some medical issues and I'm not able to swim like in a lap lane really hard. Sometimes I do what's referred to as bobbing in the deep water, which we've been asked to not do this year. Not entirely clear on why. When a good quarter of that area is not being used, and there would be, I mean, I don't know the whole picture. I don't know everything. I'm not claiming to know everything. I just know that there's a lot of people that are not physically able to swim laps the whole entire time they're there, that they would like to just tread water. And that's becoming more and more difficult.
Okay.
I know that we have to share that area with other people, and I don't believe that's a problem for most people. There would just be some sort of communication.
Have you spoke to the pool director? Is that Brandon? Who's
I
our pool
stopped
director?
in at the office last week. I know that they were very busy,
Okay.
and they were going to get back to me, but that has not happened yet.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the first I've heard,
Okay.
but I can follow up with Parks and Rec staff.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Others? Virginia? Nope. Okay. All right. We're going to move on to our regular agenda items. Consent agenda items A through C. Are there any of those that need to be pulled?
I do have a possible conflict, or I do have a conflict.
You do have a
with
conflict
B.
of interest, yes.
Yeah. I'm married to B.
Okay.
So,
So, Gary, do we need to pull B so she can declare her conflict of interest?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm-
Okay, we'll pull item B. How about A and C? Are those okay? All right. So can I get a motion to approve consent agenda items A and C?
So moved.
It's been moved by Counselor Primer, seconded by Counselor Duran, that we approve consent agenda items A and C. Any public comment? Seeing none, roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. So we pulled item C because the recommendation to the library board for position number 4, Eric Peterson, is Counselor Peterson's spouse. Yes, okay.
Actually,
And so,
it's B, sorry.
It was B.
I'm sorry, B. Pulled item B. So you would like to declare a conflict of interest? Okay. So does she actually have to leave? Okay, so, okay. Thank you. Yeah, you're not the only one. Any other public feedback on recommendation to the library board for position number 4? Seeing none, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned by Counselor Davis, seconded by Counselor Barone, that we approve the recommendation for the library board position number 4 for Eric Peterson. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously, 7-0, with one person declaring a conflict of interest. Ms. Peters. Welcome back. All right, we're now on to ordinance 2192, adopting Umatilla County Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. Mr. Smith.
Yes, I'll ask Mr. Spencer to address this.
For about the last 18 months, DLCD has been working with Umatilla County to prepare a natural hazard mitigation plan for the entire county. This is separate from the emergency management plan that we discussed earlier. What this is all of the cities and the county staff work together to identify all places of vulnerable infrastructure, vulnerable populations, areas subject to wildfire hazards, things like that. And the county has created a plan just to identify those and a work plan to do future mitigation, mostly code work. And the county has now adopted this plan. As I mentioned in my staff report, it's about 900 pages, so I didn't put it in with your packets.
Thank you.
But in order for the county and all the cities in Umatilla County to continue receiving federal grants for emergency relief, this plan has to be updated and adopted every 5 years or so. What the council is being asked to do is basically acknowledge that the county's plan is in effect. The Board of Commissioners adopted it early in June. Hermiston actually is pretty lucky on this one. We don't have a lot of really big action items that are in this plan. I think in my staff report I mentioned the biggest one is that the county would like to open up future discussions about using EOTech as a potential emergency shelter location.
Mr. Spencer, the city was able to participate in the conversation during this process, right?
Yes.
Were you the actual participant?
Yeah, I was the city's representative. We've met monthly, sometimes even bi-monthly, via remote meetings for pretty much the last 16 months.
Okay. It seems like there's a lot of connectivity to what we spoke about earlier. Is this somehow interconnected with a county emergency preparedness plan, or is this like a state requirement? What is the purpose of this one versus the whole encompassing plan?
I'll defer to Clint on one part of it, but remember I talked about emergency management. You know, one of the steps is mitigation, and so this is a way for us to plan as a county what things we might be able to do to try to get ahead of a potential emergency. And so that's what their discussion was about. I'm not sure, is this a requirement by DLCD or OEM?
It's a requirement by FEMA, and that this be in place. And really how the plan works is you identify areas that might be subject to flooding, or areas that might be subject to wildfires, or schools that might be next to a wheat field, and say, okay, we know that these items are going to be something that could be potentially be at a high risk in the future. How can we modify our land use codes and our land use end of it to help mitigate those things, whether it's mandating fire breaks or doing restrictive zoning in the future on steep slope areas. Those are the sort of things that this does. So it's more of the land use, long range, and looking at emergencies rather than your emergency management plan, which is what are your steps A, B, and C when an emergency is occurring.
So can you give a Hermiston specific example?
Like I said, we really didn't have anything in there other than the EOTech. The only thing that Hermiston wound up with was we were able to get an inventory on the county's plans of the areas that are subject to flooding, like Riverfront Park. These things have a more comprehensive inventory than now, but for future work programs, we actually didn't have any.
Other questions, Council? Yes, Ms. Spicer-Coon?
Any issues that you felt should have been included that weren't included in this plan?
No.
And I guess, do you have any concerns or worries about this plan?
Ms. Smith, you're in agreement? Yeah.
Yes, I would agree. I mean, that's one of the beauties, I guess, of Hermiston, and we don't have a lot of those natural potential for disasters. I mean, you know, the much of the county was inundated with flooding, and we had just a small part that was kind of affecting us. So that's just one example of where we stand in that way.
Other questions from Council? Any public comment? Okay, can I get a motion to adopt Resolution 2192 and lay it upon the record?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilor Primer, seconded by Councilor Myers to approve Resolution 2192. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Fourth quarter fiscal year 2021 investment report. Mr. Smith?
Yes, Mr. Kay.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mayor, City Council, as required by our investment policy, every quarter I come before you to let you know what's going on.
I'm not sure your mic, we can hear you through your microphone.
It shows it's on.
All right. Yeah, maybe closer.
This must be one of the old ones.
There, we're getting better.
I never have been accused of not talking loud enough.
Till today.
Till today. Fourth quarter 2021. I broke down our investments based on type of investment, as well as whether it was governmental or state at the state level. Here we have the corporate bonds, and most of them are in financial institutions. You can see we have a total of a par value of $1,386,000. The market value at the end of June was $1,427,000. That represents about a 3% return, which is not bad in today's market. I'm very happy with that. We have some stuff in there that's flexed, that the F to F is fixed to float. It's issued at a fixed rate. After a certain amount of time, it goes to a floating rate. And the floating rate is generally a bit lower depending on what the market is at the time. Could be higher, but in this environment, it went lower, but we're still doing okay. The second portion of our corporate entities would be energy and consumer discretionary staples. You can see we invest in Shell, Chevron, and Exxon, and I think all of those stocks are going to be going down because of the concern on global warming and fossil fuel and climate change. Apple and Walmart, they are our stellar performers. You can see we have about $500,000 in each segment. They are earning in excess of 6% on an annualized basis on price appreciation. Overall, the corporate bonds, just short of $2.4 million invested, and it produces an annualized return of about 4.4%. So performing very well even in a down environment because they're bonds. We cannot invest in equities, in other words, buy stock in these companies. Then we have what I label the callable and bullet agencies and treasuries. This is where we have unlimited capacity to buy because these are considered full faith and credit of the federal or state entity that issues. In this case, TVA, Federal Farm Credit Bank, Ref Corp, and Federal Agricultural Mortgage Corporation. That's $1,832,000. You can see they return a paltry 0.6% because they're backed by the full faith and credit. There's not much risk, so the return is way lower than it would be in the corporate market. And then we have, through the wisdom of the council to allow it, our municipal portfolio, which in the sense of government agencies versus municipal agencies, if you will, there's a bit better market because these are more coveted by investors because of the tax advantage. And you can see here we have just short of $900,000 invested for a value of $938,000 at June 30. That's about a 5.5% return on that portion of the investment portfolio. I would call your attention to this particular instrument with the Federal Farm Credit Bank. You'll notice it matures 11/5/2021. That's $1 million in our portfolio that's going to come off the books in November at a favorable rate compared to what we have now. That's about 30-something% of the portfolio that's going to reprice in November. I'm hoping like crazy rates move up in the next few months so I can at least reinvest at a comparable rate. I'm just warning you that may not happen. You do not see any other $1 million investments in the portfolio because that puts too much of the securities at risk at repricing. So we will get out of that, and I hope to invest it at a better rate. Time will tell. So if we look at the total portfolio that's investable, we have just about $5,100,000. It's worth almost $5,300,000. That's a 3.23% return. In LGIP, we have $3,300,000 at 0.6%. I'll talk a little bit more about LGIP in a minute. So our total portfolio at 6/30 was $8,429,000, value of $8,595,000. Because we do have a requirement for liquidity, the total liquidity and full faith and credit, that's basically your cash as well as LGIP and the government agencies. It amounts to $5,148,000, which is 61% of the portfolio. So if we had to tomorrow to liquidate anything, I could liquidate over $5 million. Not sure I'd get the face value, but if we had to have the money, we have the liquidity available to us. I broke out the metrics for each of the different categories. We're still a little overweight in municipals at 10.5% of the portfolio, but I've also showed you the weighted average maturity requirement. We have a target of 2.5 years. We're trying to keep it shorter because we can then be a little more agile when rates move in our favor. We also have a certain qualification of how much of the portfolio can be callable. The target is 75% max. We're at 45% now. I'm trying to find fixed investments that we know we're going to make money on and not have it be callable. But we don't have that luxury at present in this market. So let me talk a little bit about LGIP and where we are. Right now it's at 0.6%. I just looked back for grins back to 2017 when it was 1.15%. We hit a high in December of 18, about a year after I got here, of 2.75%. That was a stellar rate. But you look what happened in the next 3 years to March of this year, it went down to 0.6. And that's a 78% drop in the rate that LGIP pays for obvious reasons, okay? And then if we look at this year, we started this year out, whoops, went too far. We started this year out at 1.3%. We're now down to 0.6%. So it's dropped 54% in the last 12 months due to the market's concern with COVID. That's just pure and simple the effects that we've had. And with that, I'd be more than happy to, well, let me give you my nickel's worth of belief in what I think is going to happen in 2022. I think rates will start to rise across the board, albeit slowly. We will always be conservative in the management of the portfolio by our policy. But I would also tell you, myself and our advisor, Don Leak with Lone Pine Advisors, believe we may have some swap opportunities in the next few months where we will take an existing instrument and we can sell it at a premium take those proceeds and invest in something just as good at a cheaper price, and on the margin make some money. Not a lot, but I'm always willing to work wherever I can to make money to make the portfolio grow. We will continue to monitor and take action as necessary. I'll be glad to entertain any questions the council might have.
Thanks for your report this evening. It's always good to look at the investment profile and also where possible try and earn some additional revenue for the constituents of our community. When we talk about LGIP, I think it's always important to remember that's kind of like our savings account. It's safe, it's accessible, we can get it tomorrow if we need it. Everybody's savings account right now is paying. So, I mean, that's not, beyond what we would anticipate, but it is also safe, and it's not going to hopefully disappear on us.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we needed $1 million tomorrow, we could go get that tomorrow. So I saw Councilor Primer. No? Councilor Barone, sorry, had his hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. Had a question regarding municipals. I think last time we were here with the last quarterly update, you asked council to be able to bypass, I think, the 10% rate that we have it set right now and be able to go a little higher because there were some good numbers there. Is that something that you're still looking to continue to do moving forward?
I explained the situation that we got overweight by accident, being over 10%. And I'd be glad to bring us back into compliance, but I would have to sell off some things that are really good instruments right now and give up some return to do that. I was hopeful that my intentions were clear to hold the investments to maturity and let the process of maturity get us back to the 10% as what our guidelines were. And the council was kind enough to give me that permission.
Thank you.
It looks like it's September of 2022 that'll balance out.
If not sooner.
Yeah. Other questions? Okay, so we need actually, is there any public comment on the fourth quarter fiscal year 2021 investment report? Okay, can I get a motion to accept the fourth quarter fiscal year 2021 financial report?
So move.
Second.
It's moved by Councilor Hardin, seconded by Councilor Spicer-Kuhn to accept the fourth quarter fiscal year 2021 investment report. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously, 8-0. Mr. Smith, City of Hermiston Digital Infrastructure Strategic Planning Roadmap.
So now we're willing to continue the discussion that we started earlier, and but I think the point I would emphasize, just hearing the discussion up to this point, is just that we recognize there's more that probably needs to be done and potentially to make the most benefit for our community, but we want to be methodical and we want to make sure that we build community support and really build the partners that can make it successful. And so that's why we may seem like we're going a little slowly, but I think this is the prudent approach. But Mr. Rivera and I would be happy to answer any other questions or entertain any more comments.
To that point, each of the go, no-go decisions have financial consequences.
That's correct.
And so the first investment we made was how much, and if we say go on this next investment, that means how much?
Nate, do you have those numbers?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, Council, if we proceed with the next step, we are into it outside of staff time, approximately $15,000. And that includes phase one that's already been completed, and then that's phase two, which is the next.
Are these reimbursable expenses?
Potentially, we're tracking all our costs associated to this. The state of Oregon has put out some questionnaires about digital infrastructure projects that municipalities may consider undertaking. And so we're tracking our costs associated to the efforts we're working on this.
So I know in the ARPA funds, they had identified broadband as a potential expense, as well as the state and feds have come out with some additional funding for broadband. So, yeah, I think these are potentially reimbursable expenses, right?
Yes.
Other questions?
Jackie
Yes, Ms. Myers.
Okay, so if we go forward with
Can you
this-
talk in your microphone? Thank you.
Can't, that lights? Okay.
You can move the microphone if you want to.
If we go forward with this, how long is the next timeline for the study?
I think it was 8 weeks for the next study. Is that next portion of the study, Nate?
Mr. Mayor, Council, yes, that is correct. 8 weeks is the the longest anticipated date of completion. We may be able to complete it earlier than that, but 8 weeks is the longest part of that window.
So it's not a long, expansive time.
Right.
Correct.
What would be the expected outcome of this next report?
The expected outcome is to tie the financial implications of us starting to take a look at it and weigh that against the community benefit. And Mr. Mayor, if you're willing, there was one point that I thought was important about the presentation that wasn't covered, if you would give me some.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we talked about this effort, the work that we're doing is not only going to have the opportunity for us to undertake this effort, but potentially could be the work, the background and seed work for an investor-owned telecommunication company to understand the needs of our community and potentially use the work that we're doing right now to kind of tilt them towards making additional investments in our community. So we feel like the work we're doing isn't just specifically for the city of Hermiston and its residents, it's potentially for other telecommunication companies that may be on the fence about deciding to invest in our community. And hopefully this work can aid them as well.
A couple questions. How many providers do we have locally? And do all of those providers locally provide a current franchise fee to us?
So currently we have 5 broadband providers that do to the home service, and I believe Mr. Morgan can talk about the franchise fees portion of it if he's willing.
Yes, as Mr. Rivera mentioned, we have 5 that currently pay franchises to us, but by far and away the single largest internet provider is Charter Communications right now. All the rest are about 10 times smaller in terms of what they pay to us in terms of franchise fees.
So are some of the providers also exempt?
So all of the ones that actually provide service to customers inside of the city, they pay franchise fees.
Okay.
So the only time that it would be different is if you have something like a long haul provider that's providing service through the city to like provide service to a cell tower or something like that, then they don't actually pay like a franchise fee on their gross revenues. They just pay on a per foot or per mile basis going through the city.
So all the wire that runs through the city isn't necessarily broadband. So say, for instance, Amazon putting wire in the ground, they don't pay a franchise fee for that?
They pay a franchise fee they themselves don't pay it. It's a contractor basically, but they pay a franchise fee per linear foot of using our right of way, which is different than because most of our franchise fees for a telecom that serves customers in the city, we're actually getting internet. We charge it based on their gross revenues that they're deriving from charging for that service. So in the end, ultimately, every inch of wire that runs through the city does pay a franchise fee. It's just whether or not you're charging based on how much money they get paid from operating in the city versus how much space they take up in our right of way.
I know I'm getting way into the weeds here,
Yeah.
but the school district, that access is exempt?
No, so they have another third-party provider basically that provides them with similar to what we have here, which is kind of like a fiber backbone to connect all of their facilities. So that third-party vendor does pay a franchise fee, but again, it's on a per linear foot basis.
Gotcha. And their backbone is separate and independent from what we're talking about this evening? Is that right?
Correct, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Okay. Are there some opportunities for collaboration on expansion of that?
I think all the conversations we've had with business providers and anchor tenants in the community is a willingness to work together But we're early in the process to actually get any sort of commitment or lay out what an agreement would look like or a partnership would look like, Mr. Mayor.
Perfect. Other questions? Yes, Mr. Spicer-Coon? Can't hear you.
Sorry, I guess I just kind of want to make a comment because I'm a little confused about everything that's going on here. Okay, at least what the city's overall goals here are. I understand primary goal, see if we can get all of the city facilities tied together. But after that, it seems like maybe we're reaching for something here that's still very undefined. Are we going to be, I mean, I see a lot of ideas in the makings. Are the next steps going to help us focus our goals? Or is it just, as you said, to come up with a financial assessment for what it's going to cost us to focus our goals? I mean, I guess I see a lot of, like I said, ideas here. Is the city maybe going into the broadband business by providing something to customers? Or are we providing infrastructure that we can lease out to other corporations? Are, you know, there's been brought up wireless. We used to have a wireless system for the entire city. Is that something we're looking for? It seems to me we don't really even know. I mean, we don't know what the city's needs are. I mean, I looked at that. There's an estimate of 25 to 56 or 50% of people who don't have needs. But my understanding is that estimate's just based off of a guess by the people who filled out that survey. We don't have any information as to what those actual needs are. We don't have any hard statistics. And there's other goals here, but we don't have them tied down other than tying the city together. So I guess, how are we going to go about it, and how is this next step going to help us refine those goals and figure out exactly what we're doing here?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, I think you stated it as well as could be stated, because I think that's actually where we're at in getting the understanding that we're not ready to undertake a broadband initiative effort community-wide is because all those things are still yet to be answered. So the way you described it, as the city of Hermiston is under a direction from council based on our council goals to investigate connecting city facilities. When we connect these city facilities, which of those community goals that we've started identifying make sense as part of this project? Getting the financial information about, does the cost outweigh the benefit, or does the benefit outweigh the cost? That's the next phase. And so you're correct. A clear vision and a direction and path forward is not established. And that's why we need to go through these steps to get to the point before we actually commit large amounts of funds and effort. We can clearly articulate the answers to all those questions.
Yeah, I think that was something that was identified in that report, was there was no clear vision.
Correct.
And I think that's the process we're kind of trying to get to in having these conversations, is going down that pathway to try and identify what it is exactly the city's trying to accomplish. And so you're absolutely right. It is ambiguous at this point.
Question.
Yes.
Question.
Go ahead.
So, and from what I'm gathering from the comments, it's also because we're all idea people, is that we automatically want to hop on a, well, if we do this with this report, then we could also use it in this way, and we could also use it in this way. And so making sure that we don't end up, you know, tangenting off. Basically, we got to build the tree trunk before we add the branches. And you know, making sure that we keep that well-defined goal in mind. At the same time, then I think once we have that figured out, then we can make better use of it. But I think being who we are, and the fact that we're up here in the first place, and the fact that you all are in the position you are in, we're automatically idea people. And so it's really easy to kind of like, you know, get a little carried away sometimes of like, oh, and then we could do this, and then we could do that. And it's like, but that's what we need the study for. So then that way we have the facts, and we can make decisions based upon the numbers and what people are actually saying.
And it's intentional, thank you, Counselor, I appreciate that feedback. It's intentional to be at this pace and this level of understanding because staff is not trying to essentially get too far in front of our skis and overcommit without council being fully aware of what we're doing. And so this is the level where we first identified that we needed to come back and get direction and feedback from council to make sure that one, there's transparency in this process, and two, we are meeting the objectives of Goal 6 that you guys identified for council.
You know, one of the things in the report too was our readiness. I think it was 61% versus 71% or something like that. And so how long to readiness? How long, what's that time frame? How long do you think we get to that point where we could have a vision statement? You know, is there a timeline? Is there a time frame to readiness? What does that look like? I mean, longer than 8 weeks. So are we talking years before we have that conversation, or are we talking sometime in the next year? Or can you give me a time frame?
Mr. Mayor, based on the conversations we have an outline laid out, kind of if you continue to give us authority through this process, we would be looking at the council work session in January to be completed with SNG and their efforts. But the next one's 8 weeks, and then if you guys continue to give us authority and think we're going in the right direction, we'll continue to go. But we do not see our partnership with SNG lasting past the end of the year. Is that accurate, City Manager?
Yeah, I think our goal was to have some of the answers to many of the questions that you've brought up tonight to talk about at our next annual goal setting, to then, you know, maybe then we're at the point of committing a lot more resources to some solution. We don't know what that is yet.
Sounds like a reasonable time frame. As part of the next economic study, will there be some insight as far as technology goes? Meaning, are we putting outdated infrastructure in the ground? Are there other opportunities that we should be looking at? You know, when we invested in infrastructure, or when we invested in a utility like electrical, it's a one-horse town, right? It's a one show. I mean, you got wire to the house. There's no other way to get electricity. I guess you do solar panels or something. But I mean, in our community, it was 99% of how people got electricity. Now you're talking about a technology that's evolving and changing faster than, you know, we can investigate it. So, you know, I think it would be a bad investment to invest in something that didn't have longevity to it. Is that going to be part of this next phase?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that's an ongoing thought in the back of both of our heads. Is, as the general manager of the electric utility, I have a defined service territory. And so I'm the only provider within that defined service territory. You know, we serve at cost because council sets rates at cost. But you get into this type of business, it is a for-profit competitive business. And we keep that in mind about how much we're interested in committing community resources to a quickly evolving business model. And so, yes, that is under consideration, and we've had conversations with the consultant as well.
Other questions? Well, very exciting conversation. I appreciate Mr. Rivera and Mr. Smith undertaking this endeavor. I know the council has set it as one of its priorities or goals this year, and so it's good to hear an update and that we're working towards that goal. I think the community has some expectations, and you know, is this the next resource that becomes an expectation of living within a community, like water and sewer and electric? Is this the service that when you move into a community you expect to have? And so are we meeting the needs of our constituents? And I think that's an important conversation we need to continue to ask ourselves. And so I appreciate the council and the administration for taking on this challenge. So you're looking for an approval for the next step to move forward. Is that right, Mr. Smith?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any community feedback? Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the digital needs and readiness assessment and authorize staff to proceed with the digital infrastructure economic case assessment?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Duran, I think.
Yeah.
Seconded by Ms. Davis? Yes? All right, that we accept that motion. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for that presentation this evening. Goal setting report update. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, so, Mr. Mayor, members of the council
I'm
wanted
sorry,
to...
Mr. Smith, to interrupt. I did see Mr. Bacon walk in. Did you want to go to him first?
It's up to you. You're the...
Mr. Bacon, welcome. Sorry, I saw you walk in. I know that Lily even wrote it on my paper. He's going to be here at 7:30, so... so much going on here. We got city business we want to take care of.
Okay, well, I'll be quick.
Welcome, welcome. Mr. Bacon is representing Hermiston School District this evening, so welcome. What's going on in the school district?
Well, probably one of the busiest summer programs that we've been involved in, or at least I have in the 20-plus years of education I've been a part of. Right now we have over 600 elementary students participating in summer programs 5 days a week. We're running 2 different sessions for our secondary schools. So a 2-week session that's already concluded, and then we'll have a final session that will begin here the end of July, 1st of August for our secondary folks. And the turnout for the first session was 278 students for our middle schools and right at 300 students for our high school in those first sessions. So a pretty good turnout for students. And the shift and the excitement of it this year was it was more focused on exploratory endeavors, I guess is a fun way to say it, versus credit recovery at the secondary level. And that's primarily the history of summer programs have been credit deficiency, and that was expanded this year. Board meeting tonight, swore in new board officers and then voted on board chair and the officers for each position, and just went through and realigned with what school each board member is going to be supporting throughout the school year and checking in with. And so it was a long school board meeting, still going on, going through and getting everything lined out there as far as who's going to serve on budget committee and negotiations and all that.
Who's our new chair?
Well, Mr. Galler will remain, yeah.
Okay, and your vice chair?
Yeah, Mrs. Sherman.
Okay.
I guess really the big thing that's going on right now is we're waiting on July 22nd to get our final guidance from ODE as far as what's going to be required to start up school here in the fall. We had a draft piece of information that was provided several weeks ago. We were able to allow opportunities for people to make choice on whether they wear masks or not during our summer programs. How that will look 100% come August, we're not sure yet. That'll come out here on the 22nd. Following that meeting, we're going to host a community forum out of the district office on the 28th at 6 p.m. at night, and we'll promote that out. They announced it today at the board meeting, where we'll be able to give information, and community and staff will be able to ask Dr. Mooney, myself, and the board members will be attending also. So we'll be able to have feedback and have a nice discussion where it's not in a formal meeting setting like the board meetings typically are. So that's really the big piece of it, how it's going to work with the relationship with the health department, and how students are, what impact will be when there is a positive case that is in the school or in the classroom, and that's not entirely lined out just yet. We're based off of 3 feet is what the information that's come out is mostly advisory. We got all excited that it was all advisory. Not the case. There are some requirements that we still have to make sure that we adhere to, and one of them will be tracking COVID cases throughout the district for staff and students, and then also administering exclusion if a student or staff member becomes exposed or tests positive or has symptoms. And again, that's evolving a little bit. It could look very similar to our process this last year, but we'll see how that works. Registration is coming up. We're going to be hosting some events here at the end of the month to get registration going. We're excited. Kindergarten registration is up compared to what it normally is at this time of year. We're up over 200 and I'm going to say around 240 students have registered already, or families registered already. Typically this time of year, we're looking around 140 to 150 for classes that have registered. So we'll see what that kindergarten class looks like. There's potential it could break 500. And that really is impacted, we believe, due to COVID. So, yeah, any questions for me?
Yeah, good news. I know I spoke to several families that held their kids out this last year because of COVID and decided not to put them in kindergarten or whatever. So you'll probably have a big boom in the kindergarten class. I saw the CDC came out with guidance for teachers and said that they didn't have to wear masks in the classroom. But I've also seen other states make their own recommendations, including California, I think, that still says that they're wearing masks in the classroom. So it'll be interesting to see what ODE comes out with. The school, most people understand that the high school at least has a community health clinic. And so will the community health clinic be doing COVID testing and vaccine administration? No.
Well, they may, not that I'm aware of. So if a student or staff member, as far as develop symptoms while on, there's guidance on how we administer that. And so our 4 school nurses have been trained on how to administer those tests and then how to track it also.
Seems like you got a bunch of bodies in one spot. That would be a great place to do some mass vaccination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've talked with Bimart, been working with Good Shepherd on how that could look, potentially in August coming in. We put out a survey before the school year ended to gauge interest to have a site there, and the response was very low.
Other questions? Yes, Mr. Spicer-Coon?
I'm glad to hear that the summer program is so popular. You've had so many students enrolled in the more exploratory offerings. Given that popularity, is this something the school is going to continue to offer in the future? Because I think it would be a great idea.
We're going to try, yes, without a doubt. Will it be, I don't know that we'll be able to maintain to the level of what we are providing this year. We've been able to support it through the multiple dollars provided by the state for COVID relief. So however that budgetary process, how it looks here in the next couple of years will help guide how much we'll have. But that excitement of it, it was nice, refreshing. We've got a lot of staff that hasn't taught summer school or been involved in the past that jumped in and joined this year because they could expand and explore a little bit more.
Others? Yes, Mr. Brown.
To the mayor's point, and I saw this a lot in schools where, maybe students, when we're in the middle of the pandemic, where maybe a student wouldn't go to like a hospital or somewhere to get a COVID test, but it was really accessible at the school as long as they had parents' permission. Is that something for vaccines that could be done? I'd like to see a push for that at the high school, if that's a possibility, especially having a clinic up there.
Yeah, and it's just going to come down to how we're able to work it out with having Bimart or Good Shepherd come in and do that. I haven't read through the entire contract. Katie's working on some of that piece of it on how it works with Good Shepherd and in our agreement there.
Thank you.
Councilor Peterson?
So I know that
Yeah, I don't think your microphone's on.
So I know that school sports really had a very shortened season this last year. Have you been able to do anything this summer to try and make up for some of that lost opportunity?
So along with the summer programs, as far as people hear that and they think just in the classroom piece of it, but it's been throughout the sports programs as well. We've had our coaches going the whole time, running rather conditioning camps. We actually had to expand and add another conditioning camp session for our high school athletes. So we're running 3 of those right now, as well as youth camps and also all the summer programs that are taking place right now. So, I mean, I was in Pasco over the weekend watching basketball games. Baseball's been going. They're moving, which is good. And we're planning to start everything normal.
Mr. On?
Mr. Bacon, can you please repeat the date for the community forum
The 28th of July,
and the time?
6 p.m.
6. And is it going to be at the DO?
Yes.
Thank you.
Other question, Mr. Harden?
So, question, are the swimming programs still going on for the younger kids? I see a lot of buses around different schools, so does that mean, is that for the summer program, or is it for the swim program, or what?
So through the summer program, working with the city, we're able to have our, I believe it's 1st and 2nd grade, up to 3rd grade, right up in that range. We had such a high turnout, we couldn't support. Initially, we were going to go 1 through 5, and we couldn't support the number of students, which is a crazy thing to think in the summertime that we would be in that place. So we had to scale it back, and they're rotating kids through. But yeah, they are still going to working on swim lessons.
But the high school level pretty much is trying to make up credits? Is that what, or are there other things going on?
We've had some welding classes. They've had some different exploratory. They're done coding. Just to name a few of them right off the top of my head. Cooking. Okay. So my son really wanted an archery. That one didn't work out. But they've been having a range of offerings also. And I think that was part of why we saw the large increase. Rarely do we ever see 300 kids out of the high school say, hey, we want to come in, versus, hey, you need to come in here.
Yeah.
So testament to our staff to come up with ideas. And they were just given the range to, like, you talk to kids every day. What do you hear that they might be interested in, and what's your passion that you might be interested in? And they went forward.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So can you give us an update on facilities and status of the new stuff?
I could. It won't be nearly as accurate as what Tricia.
You can get it close.
It's going. I drove by Rocky the other day, and they're moving things around.
You got a
Loma
completion
Vista.
date?
Oh,
What's the completion date?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Is it
but
fall of
after
22?
this-
Supposed to open up?
Yeah,
Okay. So a year.
it's go time.
Yeah, yeah. I see they're moving a lot of dirt and stuff up at Loma Vista.
Sagebrush
too.
is piling.
Yep. Softball fields are done.
Yeah.
Baseball's getting close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just throwing water on them and keeping them green and letting that field settle. And
Yeah.
Get ready to go.
Lots of new coaches hired this summer too. So exciting opportunities for.
And I believe as of today, I won't announce, but I think we will be fully staffed by the end of today.
Nice.
For head coaches. We'll still have to do some work with assistants, but.
And are you guys doing your summer lunch program again?
They're getting it there at the school, so at West Park and Sunset, and doing it there, and then with the city.
Right. And that's running through the entire summer.
I
that
believe
right?
so. I don't know what the end date is.
Mr. Federer, do you have an end date for that?
The city's going through mid-August. I'm not sure what the school district is doing.
And so they
Yeah.
can get breakfast and lunch, and whoever shows up, they get food?
The school district, yes.
Yeah.
The city's only doing lunch only.
Okay. Okay. Cool. What a great opportunity for kids. There's a lot of kids out there that don't get a meal or 3 meals a day. So having the opportunity to have those resources through the school district or the city is wonderful.
I believe it's the first or second week in August that we will stop that, but that's not 100%.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
Just wanted to give kudos to the school district on the last day of the first session and the middle school session. Each kid got, it was a box for, I think it was like renewable or not renewable, but energy efficient items. So they got like light bulbs, they got shower heads, a couple other devices that they can put at their home that make it a little bit energy efficient. Every single kid got one, so I thought that was pretty cool. There's definitely kids that were excited and took a lot of interest in it. So,
is that something the school district did, or the electric utilities, or what was the partnership?
I can't remember who it came from, but it was through, it was offered to the school district to be able to get out to families.
That was a Hermiston Energy Services, energy efficiency and conservation effort to close out our budget cycle.
Nice, nice, good partnership. I actually got a couple light bulbs in the mail the other day too. That was pretty cool.
And a reminder, inside of that package of light bulbs, we also offer additional EE in-home, where we'll come and bring an installer and provide additional energy efficiency conservation measures if people are interested in.
Cool. Yeah, but I agree with Mr. Barone. Great idea to start with the young kids and let them participate in the opportunity to save energy.
We even encouraged our elementary. They got toothpaste and toothbrushes. So
nice.
Yeah, encouraging there as well.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Bacon? Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you to the school district for coming and giving us an update all the time. So we appreciate you coming tonight. Mr. Smith, sorry to cut you off there earlier, but goal setting report update.
Right. So just wanted to touch on the various goals that we set in February of last year and kind of give a quick update. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to go into a little more detail. Goal number 1 is develop an engagement and communication infrastructure to provide accessible engagement opportunities. One of the items was the community visioning process, and that's moving forward. We've been having some visioning committee members and others attending events and starting to get feedback, and that will continue through the next month or so. And I think that's been very exciting. A couple of the other items were related to maybe new technologies and how we can do outreach, and we've been utilizing something called Flash Vote. Some of you may be members of that, and that's been giving us some really good insights into different areas. Also, we've been using another tool to monitor social media outlets and see what the community's thoughts are, and not just that one person making the negative comment, but try to get a better picture of the overall feedback. And both of those have been interesting in helping us try to understand our community and what they're thinking. Goal number 2 is exercise fiscal prudence. First was evaluate Hermiston system development charges. So at your last meeting, you adopted new system development charges. So that item is complete. Goal number 3, to support the development of housing to provide diverse and affordable housing options. So the one item was the green property and senior housing, and so we're taking a look at another opportunity, see if we can get other types of development on that property. We think there might be some good, some other types of housing providers that are interested. So we'll be releasing a new RFP in the near future on that project. Goal number 4 was invest in transportation infrastructure to improve mobility and support growth. We're continuing to work on the Gear and Harper Road improvements. We've had to sort of change direction again because of the railroad and forcing us to change our design that we had for that, but we're working through that, and I think we'll be finalizing and design in time for our new goal setting to hopefully then we have saved up the money to start building and changing that intersection. We've also, one of the other items was to complete the river bridge analysis. Just this week, we've had some conversations with both the City of Umatilla and Umatilla County about that idea, and so we're working on partnerships and how we can potentially make that project help the whole region as we look at where that bridge might be located. Goal number 5, foster community partnerships to address local and regional issues. Develop partnerships with mental health service providers to connect people with services. The county made a large change as far as their provider on mental health services. I think that will be a good opportunity for us to reconnect with that provider particularly as a law enforcement entity, and be able to potentially help some more people, and rather than going down a jail path that we've had to go on in other times. Another item was a regional conversation on homelessness, and that's been in process. We've been working with different entities, including the county, Veteran Services, different people to get a project off the ground. I'm hopeful in the next probably 3 or 4 months to come back with a actual real proposal on a project that will service the region and not be purely focused on Hermiston, but our whole area here. Another item, develop partnerships with the county, state, federal agencies to support infrastructure investments. We've been working very closely with the county, but also with our federal delegation to try to get some funding out of potential transportation bills, things like that. So that's been going well. And then finally, goal number 6, we spent a lot of conversation on that tonight as far as the broadband and how we can support city facilities and then other options that might come. So those are the kind of the highlights. If there are any others or any more detailed questions, I'd be happy to talk about those.
Ms. Smith, one of our goals is housing.
Yes.
And there was some funding for affordable housing project here in Hermiston. Do you know any more information about that?
Yeah, that project, we believe, and Clint, is an affordable housing project over off of 12th that had been in the process, and I think then they qualified for some of this additional federal funding that they were...
East Highland and 12th?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not East Highland, West Highland.
West Highland, yes, sorry. West Highland.
Poplar in that area.
Yeah, it's actually more into the neighborhood there, north of Orchard, right, Clint? Yes. Okay.
North of Orchard, so over towards the park?
Yes. There's some vacant land in there. That's where they were proposing. It will also redevelop a few parcels that currently have some housing.
How many units is it?
60 units.
60 units, great. Definitely needed. I took a drive around town the other day, and every quadrant of this city is under construction. Housing everywhere right now. So how many permits in the process? Any idea? Up to this point?
Yeah, probably not quite that high.
No, I said how many?
How many?
How many?
Through the middle of June, we had 62 new housing unit permits issued. So in about 2017, we were pretty happy to hit 50 for the year. So
wow.
We'll see if the interest rates stay the way they are, so we can continue on, at that pace through the end of the calendar year. But I think we're on a good pace based on the subdivisions that are currently under development for accepting new homes. And I think we're probably on pace at hitting over 100 again this year.
Any other questions from the counselor of Mr. Smith? Yes, Ms. Peterson.
So when it comes to the houses that are being put in, are we looking at a pretty good range of the incomes that would be able to afford them? Because, if you put in houses that, you have to make at least this much to get into one, it only helps that group of people. So are we looking at a pretty good spectrum of income levels that are going to be able to get into units?
Well, I would address that in that the manufactured housing project along Diagonal. We're hoping we'll address some of the lower incomes that I think we've been missing, but they have been struggling a little bit, kind of languishing some. So we're hopeful that they will get back on track so that they can get some of their units kind of in the ground and ready to sell. So.
Other questions? Okay. This one was just for information only. No need to approve.
Yeah, no action at this point.
City committee liaison reports. Anyone? Yes, Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, we had the once-a-year Recreation Projects Fund, the TRT Fund. Great meeting. We had 6 applicants, and all 6 applicants were able to receive some funds. And on a better note, actually, thanks to Larry and the planning of moving around the color of dollars, there was an applicant that we had that was able to potentially qualify under the grant that we received from the Oregon Community Foundation to provide funds for students or for kids that are wanting more opportunities to play that maybe can't play because of prices or other things. Maybe they don't have equipment. It was made to thrive, actually. And so they were able to fit in that grant match. And so by being able to give them money from that pot, we were able to fully fund everybody else that applied. So honestly, a lot of excellent work from Larry. Thank you very much on that. And it was really great to be able to see that, a lot of the applicants that applied have a lot of projects that are worthwhile for the community, that bring a lot of tourism in, or that quite frankly just, take care of our kids in our community. So like Campus Life, even though they might not be a TRT specific one, but they do a lot of services for our community. So all in all 6 projects were fully funded, and I think it was a great meeting.
That would be a fun one to be a part of. I haven't ever been a part of that committee, but it seems like it would be a fun one to be a part of, to give money away to worthwhile community projects.
Fun.
Yeah, it would be hard to say no sometimes because you don't have enough, right? Yep. Never enough. Other committee reports, liaisons? Mayor's report, just a couple reminders to the community. Farm City Pro Rodeo and Fair coming up here in a couple weeks. Just in preparation for that, make sure that as a business owner, as your homeowner, you're trying to put the best face on for the city. So those weeds are growing extra tall, or you've got rock all over your sidewalk, please do the community a favor by going out and cleaning up and making sure that we put on a good face for our visitors that are coming into town in a couple weeks. Also, there's Eastern Oregon Business Summit that's coming up in August. Representative Levy, who also is the chair of the Umatilla County Republican Women's Coalition, I think is the name of her committee or her group. She's the chair of that, and they're hosting the Business Summit. And so it's a pretty good opportunity for our region to show off to the rest of the state what we have going on out here. It's at EOTech. I believe it's August 19th and 20th. So I would encourage the counselors, if they're available, to attend that. It's a good opportunity to hear some speakers from around the state, see some of the other representatives senators that you may not get to see on a regular basis out in our community. So please put that on your calendar. I was able to attend the groundbreaking for the ship. That was fun. Of course, the wind was blowing as usual, but it was nice to have the cooks out there and their whole family and be able to dedicate that street to them. And it was a good turnout, and I appreciate our partners all coming out to celebrate with us, and thank you to the counselors that showed up for that as well. And then the 4th of July celebration, thank you to Larry and his crew for putting on an excellent event, and as far as I know, didn't burn anything down. It was hot and windy, and fire don't ever go together, so thank you for not burning the town down. And we had the groundbreaking for Funland, which was super fun. This one was kind of the pre-groundbreaking, to make sure that the kids had an opportunity to play at the playground and take advantage of an almost finished playground. Very well attended. Kids were super excited. I appreciated the process of allowing all the kids to participate if they wanted to and have the opportunity to get out there. And it's unfortunate we're not completely done. We have some delays and hiccups, and I look forward to the full polished groundbreaking in which we'll be able to recognize all the adults. This was our opportunity to recognize the kids because that's what it's all about anyway. So it was very fun. If you have an opportunity, I was interviewed by Denise Nanke at the LOC, did a podcast about Funland. So if you go onto the LOC website, they kind of talk to different individuals across the state. They did a podcast on Funland, and so her and I talked for about 20 minutes. It's not just about Funland, it's about Hermiston and stuff going on out here, but most of it was about Funland. So it's a really fun conversation if you get the opportunity to go on there and listen. Other things. We had a city managers and mayors, county commissioners meeting last week. We're talking about the trail project and getting an update and getting that conversation going again. The Umatilla County Trail Project from Umatilla to Echo and continuing that conversation. Several of us had talked about expressing some desire to see that project move forward and potentially putting some resources towards that. We also had some conversations about homelessness, and Umatilla City Council had a city council town hall, and they invited just the community to come in and talk to them about homelessness, and they promised that was their first conversation about it. Stepping Stones was there to also communicate. And so, I think it's evident when we're talking about homelessness that people are transitory and that it's not just a single individual city's responsibility, nor should it be. And it's all of us that should be working together on having a conversation about homelessness. And so it's nice to see other communities like Umatilla talking about it and the county talking about it. Dan Dorn from the county was there to represent the commissioners and speak about the county. And so I think as we continue to look at how to address homelessness, it's going to take, a West County kind of effort to try and figure out a solution to that. And I appreciate Umatilla's leadership and also recognizing that it's a problem that they need to address too. So we just need to continue to work together on that, and I appreciate the county's leadership in that conversation. Councilors, anything? Yes, Ms. Spicer-Coon?
Just jump in. I went to this Movies in the Park this weekend. It's a great program. I think it's something we should continue doing. It's a lot of fun. I think everybody there has a good time. One recommendation to make it a little better, the bathrooms were locked. I've noticed in the city that a lot of the public restrooms remain locked. I don't know if that's still carryover from COVID or if there's other reasons for it, but it would be nice to get the bathrooms unlocked. The 2 porta potties that were there were very, very dirty, very smelly, and so it really wasn't a good way for the city to be putting itself forward with that sort of situation. So if we can get those unlocked or for the next movies, or it would be a great thing having 150 people there watching a movie without great restroom facilities is not good. So that's my only thoughts tonight.
Comment, Ms. Smith? That's something what's going on with the parks, restrooms?
We have been a little bit trying to make sure we stay on top of the cleaning, and with some staff dedicated to Funland, we weren't able to have as much coverage, let's say, around the rest of the city. But we should be able to kind of pick that up a little bit. And also, frankly, the homeless situation makes some of those a little bit harder to continue to maintain. So we're trying to work through that as well.
I think I heard Councilor Spicer-Coon volunteer to open and close those, so if you need some assistance. I didn't say clean, but he did say he'd open and close them. Others. Yes, Ms. Myers.
compliment you specifically on the way you handled the ribbon cutting for Funland by having the little kids, the people it's for.
Right.
And I think that made that so much more special.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You're right. It's the reason that we did that. And, they didn't get to participate as much in the process as we'd liked them to. It's all the adults making the decisions, but it's really for them. And
when you said, come on down,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, got run over.
They were excited, and the countdown, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really appreciated it. Others? Yes, Mr. On.
I also went to the grand opening, but my purpose of also being there was to work the table that the Hermiston 2040 committee had there. And so we had great feedback from all kinds of age groups. And I think we had about 83 surveys that were completed. So it was worth our time. We sweat a lot. But I also want to give kudos to Lily because she was amazing, and she had her son there too, and she was just a trooper. She had everything ready to go and just was out there greeting people and just being herself, being the fantastic person she was. So, and she didn't pay me to say that.
Yes.
And I also attended the South Hermiston Industrial Park groundbreaking ceremony, and it was nice to see the family. I didn't realize that Darla Hartstein was a member of the Cook family, too. And then Mr. Pratton and I attended the Odds and Ends show to also promote the Hermiston 2040 survey, and he did an amazing job. So there will be some other different activities, and even council members, if you want to participate, because this is our part of our goals. So I would encourage you to plug yourselves in the upcoming activities so that we still need to hit the civic groups, and we also have other activities planned. So we realized, Lily and I, that we need more than one person there, one to help, because we have a spin the wheel kind of a game to attract kids and adults. And so as one person is doing that, another person can be talking to the adults, and passing out the surveys. So it's a lot of fun, honestly. I also want to give a shout out to Umatilla Electric Cooperative. I noticed in the newspaper that they gave away 14 scholarships, $3,000 scholarships. And out of the 14, we had 6 students that from the Hermiston area that were awarded these scholarships. 6 of them were for students, that from here. And one was the lineman scholarship, also for $3,000. So in total, 6 students were given that. And I will also like to put a plug in, as I've said it before. I wish Hermiston Energy Services would do something like this for our students as well. So, it's a great opportunity for the students to be able to continue their post-secondary education. We know that college is very, very expensive, so I believe this is maybe one of maybe 3 scholarships in the area that are as big as $3,000. So thank you to Umatilla Electric.
And Ms. Smith, maybe you can include in your Friday updates 2040 opportunities for volunteerism, so that way if the counselors have the time and it's a date that works with them, they can show up and help you. Because I would like to help. So that would be good if we knew what days and locations those were occurring. Any other counselor reports? I'm going to go with Counselor Peterson first, sorry.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Okay, so about the playground being just for the kids. I will say that my cane, which I've been, attached to for quite a number of years, and I took it for a spin, and boy, did we have fun in a way that I haven't been able to have that kind of fun in quite some time. So it is so accessible. I was just like, I went back to work today, and I was like, all right, tell everybody, because I could get everywhere. I took a picture with my sons on it. We were all over that thing. So it's for kids of all ages. Okay, I'm just going to say that. And the 4th of July thing was amazing. just kudos to everyone who was involved in that. And I got to walk around and talk to the local businesses and, made a couple of plugs for the Chamber of Commerce to some of them. And it was a fantastic event. My kids had a blast. I've got teenagers. They're really hard to impress. So, just an awesome time. So thank you so much. And I am going to be back at the playground. I'm just saying, because as I said, the whole wheelchair, it was like, okay, suddenly I'm 8. Okay, so just saying. Oh, and I attended the Oregon Disability Commission meeting last week and got to see how that was handled on a state level. And it was really awesome. I'm going to stop talking now, but if you want to ever talk to me about it, let me know.
I think there were some other counselors that actually went all the way to the top of the silo and slid down the slide, if I remember right. Mr. Brown, yes.
I just wanted to put another quick little plug. I was actually in Bend this weekend. Phenomenal. It's really beautiful out there. It's like a backyard. But one of the cool things that when we were there is that the city actually let you rent out bicycles, and then you can use those bicycles and just go on any trail that's nearby. So I think that'd be a really good idea. Obviously, I know that there's reasons why things are done and why things aren't done, but definitely that's an idea for the city.
Does Lyft do bikes as well, or do they just do scooters? Or Bird, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure if Bird does bikes, but I know there are other companies that are similar to have a similar model. Yeah. The scooters seem to be taking over that market.
Yeah, they do.
Over the bikes, but we can always look into it.
Other counselor comments? Okay. Ms. Smith?
Just have 2 items I want to share. Both of them aren't necessarily good news, but in some ways they are, and that we have an official announcement from Larry Fetter, who's going to retire from his time with the city of Hermiston effective September 3rd. And so we'll be in the process of searching for his replacement, but I really want to be the first one to thank him for many, many great things he's done for the city and really elevating our Parks and Rec program here with the city of Hermiston. And then also our city attorney here is going to be retiring from his work as city attorney effective September 30th. So we'll have 2 major positions in the city to replace, and we're working on that. But appreciate Gary's long service to the city, and he ended it on a big note. He defended us in court the other day. So what a great way to go.
Yeah, it's always sad to see some of your true assets of an organization leaving you. And Gary, how many years is it? 22 years. Almost as long as Counselor Myers and Counselor Harden, right?
Just about.
28?
Yeah, I think Rod's got him beat out there.
Yep, yeah. So it's always hard to hear those individuals, but it's also a good statement to see individuals stay with an organization that long too. And so I'm sure we'll have more opportunity to thank you as the time goes on, but congratulations. Same to you. Mr. Federer, how many years? 7, 8, 10? Wow, time does fly. A lot of major accomplishments owed to you. So again, we'll have some opportunities to thank you, I'm sure, as time goes on, but sad to hear you're moving on, but thank you for spending your time with us and doing great things with the city of Hermiston and helping us grow. And you guys are part of the reasons why we're as awesome as we are. So thank you. Anything else, Mr. Smith?
Well, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Then we are adjourned.